Everyone that comes to Uray County falls in love with the way it looks and the beauty of the area. It's like no place else. True Grit filming sort of came in and rather took over town, and you know, the town opened their arms and tried to make every accommodation they could, because they recognized for a community of 400 people it was going to represent a lot of jobs and maybe a little bit of notoriety. People embraced the opportunity to be involved in any way. We're a ranching community. John Wayne may have had fans elsewhere, but he had fans here that worked ranches and worked horses. And there was also the opportunity to possibly have a part as an extra. They were paying $16 to $18 a day, which was really not bad in the late 60s. The only requirement for them was that they were willing to stand around in the hot sun, and they had to be no shorter than 5'10", because apparently they would all look like dwarves next to John Wayne. The craftsmen were being paid exceptionally good wages, as high as $4.50 an hour for their work. Several of the streets were completely redone and rebuilt. There were boardwalks put in, and sort of these fiberglass awnings that transformed a kind of sleepy downtown into a movie set.
And we're standing here in the gazebo in Hartwell Park because we're having some mountain weather today. Ridgway sits at about 7,000 feet, so we do get some rain and snow. In this park, over on the south side, under one of the big cottonwoods trees, is where the hanging scene in the True Grit movie took place. Scaffolding was built, and I'm sure that half the town was employed building it. In the north area of the park here, where our current post office is constructed, in the movie, that was the horse traders' living spaces, the corrals, and the offices. Many of the buildings behind me on the street here at Lena Street were used in the movie, and one of the buildings that you'll see prominently in the movie was the courthouse. And unfortunately that didn't last, it was just a facade. Over my shoulder is the firehouse, which appears in the movie. And actually this firehouse was used until the early 80s as a firehouse for Ridgway. So it served its purpose both in the movie and for the town. Up the street from the firehouse, where the health food store is now, is where the undertaker's building was. And a little ways from that is where he met up with Chin, and they had their card games. Lena Street, which runs north. In the movie, you'll see characters walking along that street. They turn left or west to go onto Clinton Street. Many of the buildings on that street were dressed up specifically for the movie. They had false fronts put on them. They had decorations, decorative awnings to make them look more typical of the time of the late 1800s. When you view the movie and you look at town now, you can still see the resemblance. You can still spot these buildings.
The True Grit Cafe is in Ridgway, Colorado. We were built in 1985. We opened New Year's Eve of that year. We've been serving the area for 20 years. It was built to showcase the history of the movie True Grit that was filmed here, as well as the history of John Wayne and what he meant to our area. A lot of folks come in the True Grit Cafe. They want to know why we're named True Grit. We explain to them that the movie was filmed at this location. They're very excited about that. A lot of them are, of course, huge John Wayne fans. What we enjoy is seeing the fans of all ages who say that John Wayne is still their hero, because we know that the history of him will live on for a long time. The building was built around the wall to showcase where you first see John Wayne in the movie. He's unloading prisoners off the wagon, and the wall was painted specifically for the movies. Everyone comes in to see the north-facing wall.
Well, that was the original paddy wagon used at the beginning of the True Grit movie, where John Wayne hauls them in and unloads them and kicks them in the seat, gives them a little push on their way to jail. It's been very much part of our history, and that's why it's down there. A lot of people say, is that the real wagon? The building down south of us here on the corner is called the Fort Smith Saloon, and the sign is still on there that they painted for the movie, and everybody comes, what is that doing here, Fort Smith Saloon? And it's actually a retail shop, but it is one of the original buildings. And actually all the buildings south of here date back to the early beginnings of Ridgway itself.
One of the most exciting things to our customers that come in is when we talk about the hanging scene. We of course tell them the tennis courts and the post office wasn't part of it back then. We kind of make them stop and imagine what it would have looked like with the hanging scene and the gallows and the mountain views behind.
The park was a fantastic setting. Those very mature cottonwood trees over there made a beautiful setting.
We're on Hastings Mesa. We're west of Ridgway. This is the location of the Ross family farm. This is where the opening scene of the True Grit film was shot. This is a very historic ranch, still a working cattle ranch, as many of them in this area are. The house was built in the very early 1900s, around 1910. It has not been restored, and it was fixed up a little for the movie, but still is the original. The barn is original, and some of the outbuildings. We're up here on the hill above the Ross family farm, and as you can see, the most of the buildings are still here. The barn, the corrals, the house, the outhouse, the little creek, and it's still a beautiful ranch and still a working ranch. And we're also at a pretty close to the same location at the very end of the movie, where the family plot was, and where Rooster Cogburn was invited to plant his bones in the family plot. We're in Debbie's Meadow today, up out of Ridgway on Owl Creek Pass. It's a beautiful meadow, up about 10,000 feet in elevation. This aspen grove behind me has lost most of its color by now. It's probably only lost it within a day to day and a half. When they shot this film, they had to do their timing extremely well to get the full color they had. One of the beauties of this location is not only the meadow here, but also the chimney peak here behind me and the Sawtooth Range. This was one of the major shots of that film, the standoff between Rooster Cogburn and Ned Pepper's gang. When he did decide to come riding to him, he put his reins in his mouth. That isn't just Hollywood. That could easily be done as a cowboy. I'm at the opposite end of the meadow, and this stream is actually an irrigation ditch, which in the movie was played as a small creek or stream. This was also a location where they were camped, and also where Glenn Campbell was doing his turkey hunting and shot the turkey.
I'm standing in the courtroom that was featured in True Grit. This courtroom was originally designed for district court purposes and is still being used for district court today. The interior courtroom scenes were shot here in this building. As Rooster and Maddie were exiting this courtroom, they paused on the stairwell landing just outside these doors. It was on this very spot where Maddie told Rooster, "You are a man of true grit."
Here we are in the campground. I'm standing next to large boulders that were shot in the movie. However, these boulders, in fact, were made out of fiberglass, which has been preserved very well over the last 38 years. Behind me, you can see the cave entrance, which was a part of the campground. At the entrance to the cave, you may be able to see the remains of the bunk beds that were constructed out of small aspen trees. We are now at the location of the snake pit. In fact, this is approximately a quarter of a mile away from the campground site. Through creative editing in Hollywood, however, it was made to look to be a part of the campground. As you can see in looking into the pit, again, the fiberglass rocks were utilized in making it look very deep.
For all the folks out there who've never been to this part of Colorado, I would encourage them to come and see a beautiful part of the country they should experience with an amazing amount of Western history, mining history, as well as railroad history. It's all encompassed together. It's a wonderful small town with a really loving heart.